So, hello everyone. So, I'm Michael. I'm lead design technology at Herzog. I want to guide you a little bit through from a customer perspective of software users, basically, and how we as well design code and use that, and guide you a little bit through some use cases, processes, thinking in the next minutes of why we do that and how we do it and how we make it sustainable, basically, because we're not a software company. So I myself, I'm already since some years in the field of computational design. Started with coding, then moved to BIM, teaching computational design, digital fabrication. So I touched upon a lot of things. Joined in 2014 HDM as a BIM manager, and now since 2022 I'm leading this design technologies group. Just for those who don't know, maybe it's Herzog de Meuron. We're kind of very spread in terms of the typologies, basically. So we do large scale, small scale furniture pieces. And that has an impact on how we treat design technologies and digital technologies in itself. At the same time, they're spread all over the world, the projects. So meaning different contracts, different settings, different scenarios, different deliveries, basically. So in a way, each and every project comes with its circumstances. And we are very lucky to have a lot of those projects in the past and learn from that what we kind of develop there and how we can improve. Design technology basically is something that kind of we focus on the process here in a way, how to support from idea to realization. So we're not, let's say, per se into the geometry process of the design. So it's kind of, it depends really on the project how we get embedded and what kind of technologies we use. So for instance, when we have some ideas that are very kind of how to translate an image into form, into shape, it's very much bound to the design process. So really kind of that the tool path maybe is kind of designed, it is design tool basically, so it's kind of heavily integrated in process. While there's other things like even furniture pieces, you don't really see the technology behind, but the grasshopper definition, it's produced with 3-axis CNC fabrication. So it's really kind of what is the best process and what are the best tools to support the design intentions. And our purpose, why do we do design technologies? We're trying to foster and leverage all the projects basically. So we are most of us architects that are integrated then in the process of the project to support it. And as you saw, each and every country, each and every situation, contracts, whatever, so we have to look very individually and specifically. At the same time, we're trying to zoom out and standardize and kind of try to scale our services. So it's kind of a little bit contradiction, but that's sometimes the reason why we as well start into developing our custom code, basically to be able to scale that up. We started small, but sometimes some years ago, and now we kind of grew over the times. And even the service landscape kind of improved or basically enlarged. So we have project delivery, which is BIM, the computation design, Rhino, Grasshopper, app development, the visualization, so we have this team, produces images, renderings, animations. The building analytics part, which is kind of performance simulations, and the workshop that is kind of for model making for the architects part, as well as digital fabrication integrated. And these are the domains, but there's a, let's say, cross section of multiple approaches like coding, AI, all these things that are really independent from the domain. So we're kind of, in a way, like a matrix organization that works not only in these domains, but tries to push the expertise over all the domains into the other fields and utilizes that and combines that we have that all under one roof. And what we try to achieve is kind of this integrated design process, that we are in the design process, in the loop. No, we're not something that comes after the design is finished. We have always to try to figure out which process is kind of at that point of time the right one, in terms of simulation, data extraction, whatever it's needed. And therefore, to be innovative and kind of move fast, we have to have project supports, we have to understand the portfolio, what is the need, and at the same time, we call it initiatives, do research, basically. So research is very kind of important to be on track and invest basically into something we saw as maybe issues in the projects or solve and improve for future projects. And there we as well, because we are like an in-house consultancy, We very much look at the users basically behind who is using what technology basically is kind of more complex. There's always relationships and training, what people have to do basically and stuff like that. So we always kind of see what is the user strategy, the user story behind a certain process basically, and to really kind of bring it on the market as good as possible. And let's say development cycle in that, let's say, initiative level, basically where we do research, we really experiment a lot. We do kind of sometimes internal hackathons. So sometimes we do exchanges with universities, and then we move that into maybe something that is bigger, like an initiative, try to bring it into daily practice, and then really into something that is a consumer product, basically, that is internal or externally available. So what are our challenges, in a way? Data quality, data in itself, interoperability and sustainability as a global, let's say, topic are kind of the big drivers of why we kind of even have to digitalize more. And our goal is always kind of to find scalable solution that is possible to do that over the whole portfolio. And I brought some chapters, and I want to, let's say, highlight some processes, thinking, and they are kind of important to go back and forth between the services, what we do, to understand why we do it, and to see what we do on the open source side, for instance. So when we look at BIM, I mean, we started early on with 2005 with modeling, but this is until 2014, it was the kind of the early days, the phase where it's kind of, okay, you produce a drawing out of it, maybe you coordinate, maybe you test, maybe you do only a facade, but it's kind of not really kind of a delivery method, kind of something that has a real impact on the organization. That was kind of the feeling that you get after looking at these projects. This has changed basically at some point of time due to large-scale projects we had, mainly hospitals, pharmaceutical industry in Basel, that kind of brought in a higher level of complexity, of needs, of how we treat that, how we kind of organize things. We had different roles basically as even leading BIM basically in that part. And that kind of not only, quite obviously, is something like that, okay, it's complex building, we can use geometry, we can understand this one side. No, it's kind of the 3D part of it, the data part of it maybe as well, to really kind of to understand how to utilize the models for our best purposes. But then we as well saw, okay, it's not only that. I mean, so we tested XR with that. So what are other potentials with that? So kind of bringing these models on site. So really in this kind of thinking of, we don't know yet, in this experimental stage. And then we collaborated with other firms that really brought into laser scanning to that. It's kind of interesting to that basically what are other processes we can integrate. And this led to this kind of huge ecosystem basically that we have for BIM, that serve different purposes. And in that ecosystem as well, something like computational design tool like Rhino, interoperability tools, all these things are relevant basically to be able to produce a project. But what is necessary sometimes, we need very specific workflows. So it's kind of, it's how it started in some projects, really kind of starting coding, it got bigger and bigger and bigger. And we figured out, okay, we have to professionalize that, GitLab, later on GitHub. And really kind of, there we went into testing into something that was new for us. And we didn't foresee everything, to be honest, at that point of time. And really bring something like Revitron, it's kind of a wrapper that runs on PyRevit basically onto the market. That does simple things. That was our first test case of open source in that case. That really fills features that are missing, just put the room tag always in the left upper corner, something that Revit can't do. And it's a simple operation, and architects love nice plans, so I mean we need it. So it's a tedious work basically. Or other things that are more complex, let's say, get all the, let's say, concrete slab, the finished floor, the structural floor, all the heights basically that you need for the tags, really from geometry. BIM tools can't do that mostly, so you really have to basically calculate that in a very brute force way, unfortunately. But we need that data. Sometimes people just do it manually. It's ridiculous, no? You have it there, but you need to access it. And other things that we already started, what happens when someone deletes something in the model. There is no track history, there is no GitHub of the model, and we really needed to understand when the data set is gone, how to retrieve it, and really understand the history of a project. So what we started is kind of we write everything to other databases. So we already saw that this is the market didn't have that, and that it expanded with QA, QC, all these things. So this is kind of the complexity part. No, it's getting there is nothing really there or to handle that complexity, but that's not the only truth we have, or the only, let's say, challenge that we have to tackle. So we started strategically looking at where do we want to go with BIM, basically, and then we figured out, okay, there's something like a standard process for BIM, there's a customized process, but we need really this BIM Lite, this early design stage approach, basically, that we can work with data and very fast. And there was no product in the market as well. And basically, so we started basically user text onto geometry and some other things, basically, to really inform the Rhino models a little bit, to work with overrides, graphical, to have a graphical representation. And it's really bringing some information into the models. And then basically make that nice, make it even better, that kind of, if we kind of make it public on open source as well, people can use it, have an installer, all these things basically, and as well understand how a product is used. No, we're tracking, for instance, the use of the tools basically, and that's kind of led to a professionalization of the whole thinking about how to develop tools. No, it's not only just writing a code, a script that solves something. It's very project specific, but we now went into like scaling it up on a firm-wide level. And there you need other ways of thinking. I mean, we're all not software developers. We haven't worked at Google, and we are all architects. But I think the learning process basically needed to happen behind. And that's kind of how we went into the whole field of open source, basically. But interesting is as well to see about the way how we provide these services, how we develop those, basically. That to understand what are the real pain points behind that, because the expectations are very high. Everyone, if they want a new service, they either want to build it or have it very, let's say, fast-paced. But the reality is it's still kind of, we have to optimize those processes. So for instance, I mean, we love football stadiums in the office, basically. So what we do, we have to design them. It's complex with all that everyone has a good view, basically. So we created these tools, mainly computational design, Grasshopper. And that's kind of, we can create these bolts, the geometry, that kind of, for that typology, works great. That service is a very, let's say, specific typology. It doesn't happen that often, unfortunately. So, but it's a lot of knowledge, a lot of understanding, and then we figured out, okay, but we do auditoriums, but it's the same issue, but on a less, let's say, smaller scale, and it's not a specialist who needs to operate. It's someone like in between, basically, that maybe needs a Grasshopper definition to run the auditorium, and we know it has a great view from all the sides. So it's kind of the transferring of a concept into another service, basically, and adapting it to the users behind that are kind of operating that. And it's great. In a way, you can say, hey, great, we're doing a good job, we're solving things, interoperability, but there are more use cases. So the more and more technology is advanced, the more we kind of research first and figure out that it's interesting. We see how we have to improve more and more on certain things. So for instance, we do a lot of XR developments here. We mill the models, the QR codes, and then we map with hologram on top of it, or with Unity experiences, basically, it depends. Let's say there's some representations that we can as well, even in that case, sell to a client that uses that for their building container on site to, let's say, get the interaction with the public community around, which is great. No, I mean, we have a service, we can sell it. It's great. I mean, it's well needed, and then we can as well think about how to integrate it into the design process. Kind of how, in that case, again, baked textures with hologram, basically high-end models we can use to really kind of get this one-to-one feeling that we as well, because we work a lot with mockups, physical mockups, we can't do it for each and every project. So we have to kind of find technologies basically that fit in well. And then we test that even on an urban scale, basically comes with different problems, basically like drift and all these things. But it's kind of, we see that there's a lot of potential. But how do we create then from a research that is interesting, something like a service that is really kind of, you can apply and can even say this costs like 2 days of work. Even more, so basically we work now, it's a little bit of a side topic, but kind of comes out of that the same developments. Basically, we could start now with app developments and then do really app that are published to Google and iPhone store, Apple Store, and really use it basically for interaction. So that's kind of what it kind of opens up. It's getting bigger and bigger and bigger, no more. But what is the real problem behind? Model quality. So we have a lot of models behind in the office, and in a way we have to track the models. We have to understand, is that model suitable for that service, basically, because we're specialists, but we're not so many. I mean, we're still kind of have to operate efficiently, so we have to really track down automatically through scripts, basically, where are the issues that are in the models that do not allow us to work and to create these services. Already kind of have the prerequisites for our services externalized to our customers, the architects. And then other things like efficiency of the teams as well are impacted too. Now, someone that opens a Rhino file for 10 minutes, that's something that is not good. And then basically, yeah, it's great. We can do great stuff. But we have to be as well very aware that kind of every service we do, we have to understand what is the impact. So, I mean, you can do that for BIM use cases as well. We know that not every model is made for every BIM BIM use, and for other, let's say, new services like simulations. So we have to be clear if we want to have a simulation that is really in that, I don't know, one day time can be done. The input has to be great, no? We all know everything that comes great in can come great out. There are other sayings that are very clear that we need that. No? So maybe the last chapter, basically open source. We already put a lot of things open source, where you can go to github/herzog.com. You can as well use that QR code. I mean, it's something that we kind of share because it is something that everyone does. The concepts behind those things are not really kind of very unique, and they are not very competitive in terms of our core the projects. We started basically with things like Revitron. I told basically there was a test case where we understood, so this is maintained by someone else externally, but really kind of this sustainable development of tools. We're losing as an architecture practice sometimes software developers because they're architects. They evolve, they maybe move to a software company, maybe they go to another industry. So, and in the past we had many of those applications that we sold to our teams, but once one developer is gone, you can't provide that service anymore. So it's very, basically everything has to change in a way how we do it, how we document things, how we kind of use GitHub and all these things to really make it as long livable as possible, that the investment we do on the research side is kind of financially feasible for the office, that kind of, it still stays even if the team is changing over time. So for us, it's open source in a way. One potential way for us to give it a longer life in a way. I mean, sometimes it's a hope, sometimes it works. We will see as well. It's for us a learning process. And then we put as well, we have to structure things. I mentioned BIM Lite. We figured out, hey, when we want to put it open source, we should maybe remove the graphical override core into another package that basically can be used in our Sunlight tool. And the good thing is, if you work with that, you as well get professional. You have to professionalize basically before you go public. So it's a nice side effect as well to think about really kind of, if it's open source, And if there is like a community where we collaborate, I mean, we don't promote it that much, but it's for us more like an exercise because we can understand how does it work, what is the architecture behind, and how we can improve. And things like this, I mean, this is still not private, but in a way, like this, something like Sunlight tool, because we're reworking it. I mean, this is not an HDM design, no, it's kind of a process. And I guess there are many offices who do that. So it's kind of really questionable as an industry that every office does that on their own. And there are other things that triggered more. So we joined with the Berner Fachhochschule, a special week with Shaper, Erne, and Bärholzbau. Basically, the idea of circularity, because it's changing the process. No, you don't work with geometry and then pick the elements. You have elements and then grade out geometry. And the whole thing is kind of where all these other ideas, basically, of augmented fabrication that we tested, stuff like that, the data, the data of the circularity, basically, on the end fabrication come together. And this is very interesting because there we see this is as well a kind of open source thinking in a way that we collaborate with universities to get together to an understanding how this process could work. It's not really 100% open source, but for an architectural company that shares the knowledge here on that field with university, it is kind of, at least for the thinking. And then basically we moved into things like performance simulations and the whole LCA topic. When we started it, I mean, we kind of are able to calculate some stuff, and then we figured out, okay, there are others that are working on it. And then we saw, okay, there's like Link.io, there's something, Danish company, Arab as well, and there's some open source developments, but it's really hard to kind of find the right one to kind of collaborate. And that's where we started as well as our own tool. And this is not open source yet. There will be parts of it open source in the future. But this is really kind of this life cycle calculator that in a way we want to do, and we want to see as well integrate something like LCAX or EPDX and really be able to enlarge that and make it kind of a solution that is kind of has a long life. It's sustainable. No, it's not something that is kind of not living that long. So currently it's kind of it's a Revit application we're developing. That really is kind of from the core concept. It's kind of translates the model as it is through rules into another view, basically, of data. So we map it to a different data model that fits out our LCA calculations, and then I mean it's very fast. It's faster than Revit itself, which is as well interesting, and then we can assign build-ups and LCA data basically to it and do real-time calculations basically. That's one piece. But the really interesting piece that relates, let's say, heavily to that discussion basically we have here is that we have to migrate the data through this, let's say, mapping strategy into a data model that is abstract, that is not related to the version of the software, it is not related to the software itself, it may come from Rhino, Revit or whatever. And basically it's kind of, I mean, the mapping thing is the LCA side only, but really kind of store that in Directors database as a snapshot, maybe with Speckle in the future, we will see. So as well here, a lot of thinking and really kind of how can we make the data our data, basically, that kind of we own, and it's in an abstracted way, and we can do calculations as we want to do. So what's next? Definitely this is something that Builders AI already mentioned before. The open letter is something that is interesting that we did not sign, but we signed that one. So that's the future AEC software specifications, mainly UK driven, around AHMM, Grimshaw and others. Basically, it's a 10-point list of what a future AEC software should look like, how should it look like. We did not write that document, but we're supporting it, and I think you can read it online, you can find it, and the interesting thing is what we totally agree is the below one, the foundation, the data framework. So we have to basically have a data framework We saw some talks today. We know, I mean, the work around HOK or Greg Schleusner and IFC5. There are a lot of kind of these thinkings. How in the future we'll have an abstracted data model that is not the live cloud model with one provider, but it's our own, basically, wherever we want to host it model, basically. So that's one big piece. Another big piece for us is kind of we combine sustainability data now with XR. So in a way, we're testing that out. So that was one of the first tests. Our hope is as well to kind of push basically the whole topic, and there we that Catherine de Boeuf's chair basically invited us to join there at the World Resources Forum to showcase one of our projects, Hortus, where we really kind of, okay, how do we work with XR to showcase the architecture, but as well as sustainability data and all these things. So it's kind of how to bring these services together on the next level. So this is experimental, but you can see it triggers something with people. It's kind of storytelling in a way. And then AI creation, I mean, quite obviously something like image creation and stuff like that. I mean, this is maybe something that is clear, but it will develop over time. We have new tools on the market, Forma, Finch, Spatio, Infrared, all these things that pop out. We have to see and understand if they're able to do. And then the last thing, basically, so integrating AI into like authoring software is kind of something that will as well, I mean, we will enlarge our team. That's the idea. So basically that we are able to operate maybe in a, let's say, more spoken way with our authoring tools and the models, basically, and see how we continue there. So for us, it's really important, kind of this community collaboration culture. So I think I really can thank Max and everyone who's involved. I don't know who you are all, basically, and mentioning, I think we can say it's a big applause to that something like that happens. It's really great that we have that sharing thing, because especially when we come back to the sustainability topic, that's massive, and individual organizations won't solve it, and I think there it needs really this community and this collaboration, and hope this continues in such a way. Thank you all.